Hey guys, tonight we're lowering the mood lighting and lighting a few questionable candles for something a little more provocative than usual, the real lives of medieval ladies of the night. Not the sanitized fairy tale version, and definitely not the steamy HBO After Dark kind. I mean the actual day-to-day grind, mud, stink, coin purses, and enough bad pottage to make you nostalgic for instant noodles. So before you settle in, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that white noise, and get as comfortable as possible. But let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered how medieval sex workers actually lived? Did they get paid in coins, bread, or exposure? Were brothels really glamorous dens of velvet and vice? Or was it more like living in a very damp, extremely judgmental group house? Did they pay taxes? Who made the rules? And what did you do if the local priest booked a room right after your landlord? Would you last a week with medieval hygiene, fashion, or the mysterious house rules that mostly involve not dying of fleas? And how did you even get into the business? Was there a job interview, or did you just show up and try not to look too alive? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in the late 1300s, and you're about to start your first day as a medieval lady of the night. Your boss is missing, your best dress smells like soup, and you already owe the cook 3 onions and a favor. Welcome to the night shift. Good luck. You step into a street lined with flickering torches and more questionable aromas than a cheese market in July. Welcome to the medieval red light district, where every building is both a place of business and a potential public health hazard. Cobblestones underfoot, suspicious puddles everywhere, and a crowd that makes rush hour look peaceful. This is your new neighborhood. Don't expect a neon sign. Just look for the house with the loudest laughter, most dramatic curtains, and someone arguing over the price of socks. You shuffle past a row of houses, so crooked they look like they're actively trying to escape the tax collector. The buildings lean together for warmth, gossiping through cracked shutters as a parade of customers, hawkers, and street musicians creates an endless off-key soundtrack. You're already regretting wearing shoes. Every other step lands in something you hope is just spilled ale and not last night's chamber pot contribution. Someone is definitely cooking cabbage nearby. But the real perfume of the district is a complex blend of roasting meat, body odor, stale beer, and the unmistakable tang of hope slowly evaporating. It's evening, which means the district is only just waking up. Curtains are flung open in the brothel windows, revealing a cast of women and a few men, in clothes that range from suggestively festive to this was probably white once. The professional uniform is flexible. Maybe it's a red hood. Maybe it's just the confidence to wink at strangers. Or maybe it's a dress that's seen more adventures than a crusader's tent. Someone waves from a balcony. You wave back out of reflex and are immediately propositioned for a discount you don't understand. The street is alive with chatter. The language here is a little faster, a little bolder, half jokes, half negotiations. Children dart between legs, selling flowers or the medieval equivalent of TikTok shoutouts. By my lucky charm, it only sometimes works. Someone is arguing loudly with a goose, neither appears to be winning. You pass a food stall advertising fresh oysters with an asterisk that just says, probably. The air vibrates with the sound of clinking coins, giggles, distant singing, and the creak of wooden signs advertising specialties you don't dare ask about. You get the sense that this place runs on different rules. The brothel owners, the madams, and their trusted lieutenants hover in doorways, keeping a sharp eye out for both opportunity and trouble. Guards loiter at the edges, sometimes looking for bribes, sometimes just window shopping. If you're new, everyone notices. Heads turn, judgments are made, and someone immediately tries to sell you a genuine relic of Saint Ethel the Unwashed. You politely decline. Navigating the street means navigating its politics. Rival houses try to outdo each other with louder music, cheaper drinks, or more flamboyant window displays. Sometimes it's a full-on competition. Who can sing the loudest? Who can draw the biggest crowd? Who can convince the bishop he's in the wrong neighborhood? Everyone is hustling, and every hustle has its own rhythm. There's a sense of camaraderie, but also a deep survival instinct. You see workers sharing a crust of bread outside the main house, trading stories about clients, madams, and the newest city ordinance designed to make their lives even more complicated. This is the only part of town where no one blinks at a group of women cackling at midnight, or at a customer sneaking out a side door with both shoes but only half his dignity. Judgment exists, but it's reserved mostly for those who don't tip. If you think modern nightlife is wild, try sharing a block with 3 taverns, a bathhouse, 2 unofficial fortune tellers, and 1 enthusiastic amateur musician who's apparently been playing the same song on a hurdy-gurdy since the Black Death. The whole neighborhood is an endless loop of hustle, noise, laughter, scandal, and the occasional surprise livestock incident. But here's the thing. For all the filth, risk, and drama, the red light district has its own warmth. You're an outsider at first, but after a few evenings you learn the secret handshakes, the best stalls for bread, and which windows to avoid after dark. It's a place that welcomes anyone who's ever needed to survive by their wits, their humor, or sheer stubbornness. And as you stand there, watching the flicker of torches and the parade of humanity, you realize this is more than just a business district. It's a family, a fortress, and a carnival rolled into one. And whether you came here to work, to hide, or just to witness the chaos, you're now part of the wild, ridiculous story that is the medieval red light district. Good luck making rent, and mind the puddles. Nobody grows up wanting to be a medieval lady of the night. Maybe you were widowed, orphaned, or just extremely allergic to starvation. The job interview? Simple. Survive, show up, and try not to flinch when someone asks about your references. If you can hold your own in a shouting match and avoid dying from scurvy, you're basically overqualified. Let's set the scene. You're standing at a crossroads, literally and figuratively. It's dusk, the crows are circling, and your prospects are about as bright as a candle in a rainstorm. You've tried spinning wool, selling turnips, maybe even auditioned for disgruntled goose wrangler. Each time, the pay is exposure, not the good kind, and a bruised ego. There's a rumor that Madame Agnes is looking for help down in the red light district. And suddenly, the idea of dealing with noisy drunks and nosier neighbors seems preferable to another dinner of thin soup and regret. Your first day on the job starts the way all great careers do, with awkward small talk and suspicious glares from women who have seen it all and still manage to look unimpressed. The madam, or house manager if you're being fancy, eyes you up and down like you're a slightly wilted cabbage at the end of market day. She asks you 3 questions. Can you work late? Do you have any contagious diseases? And can you keep a secret? You answer yes, no, and depends who's asking. And suddenly you're in. Training? If you can call it that, it's just a quick rundown of house rules. Don't steal. Don't fight. Don't fall asleep on the job. And if the bishop visits, you never saw him here. You're handed a threadbare dress, told which bed is yours, top bunk, near the leaky window, and warned to keep your boots on at all times. Hygiene is more suggestion than expectation. If you manage to keep your hair free of livestock and your breath less deadly than the communal stew, you're already in the running for Employee of the Month. You learn fast that there's no real career ladder. This is less corporate office, more gladiator arena with extra eyeliner. Your references? Nobody checks them. They're just happy you're not currently wanted by the city guard or married to a rival brothel's bouncer. If you can manage a smile after a 12-hour shift and haven't bitten a customer unless specifically requested, you're golden. Most of your new colleagues ended up here the same way. Maybe they came from the countryside after a bad harvest, or their husband tragically disappeared, which, in medieval times, could mean anything from a jousting mishap to an argument over porridge. Some are runaways from strict families, others are single mothers or young widows. One girl insists she was once a lady's maid at court, but nobody believes her, mostly because she says it in 3 different accents and can't explain why she thinks forks are black magic. Every so often, a new recruit stumbles in, fresh-faced, clutching their only dress, and asking where to put their things. The older workers welcome them with a mix of skepticism and oddly maternal advice. Don't trust the cook's bread. Always hide your best socks, and never, ever tell a customer your real name unless you want to hear it shouted in the market the next day. The business itself doesn't judge. If you can work, you work. Skills like wit, stamina, and an ability to look interested in long stories about sheep are highly prized. Every now and then, someone arrives with dreams of saving up and buying their way out, opening a tavern, or just moving to a quieter village where everybody minds their own business. These are generally met with supportive nods and knowing glances, the kind you give someone who insists they're going to start jogging every morning. But despite the bleakness, there's camaraderie here. Everyone remembers their first night, scared, hungry, and trying to figure out if this was a tragic end or a strange new beginning. They share stories over late-night stew, trade hair ribbons and heartbreak, and learn how to spot a bad client from 50 paces. In this world, just making it to tomorrow is considered a win. So, if you're wondering how you got the job, the answer is, you survived everything else, and you showed up. In medieval times, that's all the resume anyone needs. The workplace is part flophouse, part gossip factory, and part flea sanctuary. The beds creak, the sheets are a patchwork of questionable stains, and the only privacy is found behind a curtain that doubles as the house cat's scratching post. Management is either a shrewd madam, a semi-retired ex-knight, or a group of suspiciously well-dressed nuns. Don't ask. Step inside, and the first thing you notice isn't the decor, unless damp, dimly lit, and aggressively lived-in counts as a theme. The air is thick with a blend of perfume, sweat, wood smoke, and something faintly medicinal, like someone tried to mask last week's disaster with a bucket of rosemary. The floorboards are a historical document in themselves. Each squeak and warp tells the story of hundreds of customers. Spilled ale, dropped change, and the occasional barnyard animal who wandered in by mistake and became part of the staff. The common room is the beating heart of the house, a sort of medieval open-plan office, minus the motivational posters. Here, workers sprawl on benches or perch on rickety stools, trading jokes, secrets, and opinions on which local knight has the coldest hands. There's always someone patching a hole in their stocking, darning a hem, or telling a story that definitely didn't happen the way they remember it. If you listen closely, you'll hear the real news of the city long before the town crier rings his bell. Who's been thrown in the stocks, who's left their wife, who accidentally let a goat loose in the mayor's kitchen. Walls are an afterthought, sometimes made of actual stone, sometimes just a heavy curtain strung between beds. Private rooms exist, but the term private is wildly optimistic. Doors don't quite close, windows don't quite open, and you can hear every argument, every laugh, and every "oh, is that supposed to go there?" through the paper-thin partitions. If you crave alone time, your best bet is the laundry room, where nobody dares go unless they absolutely have to wash something, usually once a month, at best. The furniture is a mishmash of whatever could be begged, borrowed, or dragged in after dark. There are 3-legged chairs, tables so warped they double as hills for the resident mice, and beds that make more noise than a festival. If you want a soft spot, you lay a straw under your blanket and try not to think about what's hiding in it. Fleas are a given, lice are a fact of life. Every so often, the house has a deep clean, which is really just code for setting the bedding on fire and starting over. Management styles vary, but each has its quirks. The shrewd madam runs the place like a combination between a headmistress and a retired pirate captain. Strict, sharp, but somehow always knowing when to look the other way. The ex-knight tells endless stories about glory days, most of which involve more mud than glory, and end with him getting chased by a chicken. And the nuns? Well, nobody's ever sure if they're there for charity work, penance, or undercover quality control. Meals are served at irregular intervals and in unpredictable forms, sometimes a glorious stew, sometimes just stale bread and pickled onions, if you're lucky. The cook is in a good mood and hasn't mistaken lard for soap again. Communal eating means sharing everything: food, cutlery, complaints, and sometimes the mysterious soup spoon, which nobody can remember buying, and everyone suspects is actually a trowel. The house pets are legion. Cats keep the rats at bay but are as likely to nap on your head as they are to catch anything. Dogs wander in and out, generally belonging to nobody but claiming every dinner scrap. One house even boasts a parrot, smuggled from somewhere vaguely exotic, who can curse in 3 languages and loves to shout, "Not again," at inopportune moments. Despite the chaos, the brothel is a home. It's noisy, crowded, and frequently a little too pungent, but it's also a place where nobody's really alone. Here, friendships are forged over midnight bread and whispered jokes. Rivalries begin and end over who gets the warmest corner. And every scandal eventually becomes just another story for the next shift. It's a medieval open concept, all right, messy, lively, and never ever dull. So, if you're settling in for your first night, just remember, claim your space, guard your blanket, and don't be surprised if someone's pet chicken curls up on your feet. In this house, privacy is imaginary, but at least the company is real. Forget about personal space. Your new housemates include a rotating cast of women, a security guy who can't count past 5, and a rooster who wanders in every Tuesday. Sometimes you're friends, sometimes you're fierce rivals, and sometimes you're all hiding from the tax collector together in a broom closet. It's like a reality show, but everyone's allergic to soap. Let's meet the cast. There's Margaret, who claims she used to be married to a minor nobleman, though her only proof is a badly forged ring and the fact she swears a lot in French. Then there's Alice, who keeps a knife under her pillow, and once scared off a drunk customer with nothing but a glare and the threat of serving him special stew. Joan has 3 children, none of whom live in the brothel, but all of whom occasionally show up to borrow bread or drop off gossip. And you, well, you're the new one, still learning everyone's names and desperately hoping you won't have to share a bed with anyone who snores louder than the church bells. Your first real lesson? There are no secrets in this house. Every whisper travels through the thin walls like a message in a bottle, only with more giggling and less subtlety. Try to keep anything private, your money, your feelings, your favorite pair of socks, and it becomes common knowledge by breakfast. Who's fighting? Who's in love? Who accidentally broke the chamber pot and tried to blame it on the rooster? The answer is always everyone knows. Sometimes you're close as sisters, sharing hair ribbons and terrible advice. If someone gets sick, the whole house rallies. Hot soup, warm blankets, and a rotating schedule of terrible singing meant to cheer you up or possibly drive the fever out through sheer volume. On slow nights, you all pile onto one bed, trading ghost stories and urban legends about what happens if you ever pay off all your debts. Nobody actually knows, it's never happened, but rivalries bubble just beneath the surface. There's competition for everything. The best room, the cleanest dress, the customer who actually pays in cash instead of promising a chicken tomorrow. Spats break out over missing combs, stolen wine, or who gets the corner bed furthest from the suspicious damp patch. Arguments are loud and theatrical, but the house rules are clear. Nobody goes too far, because at the end of the day, you all need each other to survive. After all, it's hard to fight off an angry customer or the occasional drunk monk alone. And then there's the security guy, Thomas. He stands by the door, arms folded, practicing his most intimidating face. Unfortunately, Thomas is about as threatening as a slightly upset sheep. His main duties include breaking up arguments, scaring off troublemakers, and, on Tuesdays, guiding the rooster back outside before it tries to lay an egg on someone's pillow. He's well-meaning, fiercely loyal, and once took on a real thief by accidentally locking himself in the pantry. You don't question Thomas. He's part of the furniture, lumpy, earnest, and always there when you least expect him. Of course, the menagerie doesn't stop with Thomas. The infamous Tuesday rooster is somehow both a mascot and a menace. Its crowing is your unofficial alarm clock, and its favorite hobby is eating any crumbs left out after midnight. Some believe it brings luck. Others are convinced it's plotting a coup. Either way, you give it space and try not to make eye contact. Household emergencies bring out the best and worst in everyone. When the tax collector makes his rounds, it's a coordinated effort, money hidden in floorboards, everyone pretending to be asleep, and a surprisingly convincing chorus of, "We're just humble seamstresses, sir." If someone falls behind on rent, a collection is taken up. If someone gets into trouble with a client, the whole house closes ranks. One time, everyone ended up in the broom closet together, sharing a loaf of bread and listening to the collector mutter about ungrateful sinners. For all the chaos, this oddball crew becomes your reluctant family. You celebrate birthdays, nurse broken hearts, and stage elaborate practical jokes involving fake love letters and the occasional strategically placed frog. Nobody would choose these circumstances, but you make the best of them, inventing your own traditions and finding laughter in the madness. So yes, you bicker, you borrow, and you sometimes threaten to move out. But when the doors close at night and the laughter dies down, you realize you're not alone in this ridiculous, relentless world. You're surviving together, fleas, fights, and all. And honestly, it's not the worst kind of family you could have found. Dress code, whatever's clean, vaguely flattering, and mostly free of livestock. If you're lucky, you have a bright red hood, officially marking you as a professional. If not, it's the classic "what died in here?" look, accessorized with a scarf, a patchwork skirt, and the confidence of someone who's survived 3 outbreaks of lice and is not afraid of a little public humiliation. Medieval fashion for ladies of the night is less Paris runway and more grab whatever doesn't bite you back. There's no company wardrobe, nobody's handing out size charts. You get a trunk, a shelf, or, if you're really low in the pecking order, a nail in the wall to hang your one decent dress. Clothes come from 3 sources. The market, expensive. The madam's second-hand trunk, mysteriously damp. Or a friend who just upgraded and feels generous rare. If you want variety, you better get creative. Yesterday's work skirt becomes tonight's shawl, and last week's scarf gets rebranded as a daring belt. The official uniform, if your town enforces such things, is the notorious red hood or sash, meant to identify you as a professional to both customers and, conveniently, the local authorities who want to keep tabs on you. Is it flattering? Not particularly. Does it match anything else you own? Absolutely not. Is it easy to keep clean? Only if you enjoy a good session of scrubbing in icy water while your co-workers heckle you from the window. Most just accept the stains and call it character. Underneath, layers are your friend. A chemise, underdress, if you can get one, or just another patched linen shirt if not. Bodices and corsets are a luxury, usually reserved for nobles and the sort of women who haven't done their own laundry since the last king died. For you, the look is about survival and improvisation. One skirt over another for warmth, mismatched stockings, and boots that were clearly not designed for comfort, style, or walking more than 10 steps at a time. Accessories? Oh, you have them, just not the glamorous kind. Maybe a string of wooden beads or a bent pewter brooch. Someone might own a copper ring, which instantly raises their social standing 3 imaginary levels. Most important, though, are pockets. Except pockets haven't really been invented yet, so you sew secret pouches into your skirts and hide extra coins and emergency garlic wherever you can. Need a place for your house key, lucky charm, and the one comb that hasn't been stolen? Tuck them in your shift and hope for the best. Fashion here is about sending a message, mostly. I'm approachable. I'm not contagious. And I can handle a night out in the rain without turning into soup. The more flamboyant your look, the easier it is to stand out to customers and the more likely you are to attract the local constable's attention, who's got very strong feelings about hemlines. There's an art to showing just enough ankle to entice, but not enough to warrant a lecture from the church lady across the street. That's the real high-stakes game. When it comes to keeping your outfit in working order, ingenuity is key. Lost a button? Replace it with twine, a bead, or, in desperate times, a dried pea. Torn seam? A little lard and last year's embroidery floss. Cleaning means dousing the dress in vinegar, scrubbing with sand, and letting it dry in the sun, which in medieval terms could take anywhere from 3 hours to 2 weeks, depending on the weather and whether the house rooster lets your clothes stay on the line. You accessorize not just with jewelry but with attitude. Maybe a lopsided smile. Maybe a stare that could curdle milk. Makeup is a luxury for the rich. Your cosmetics are a good night's sleep, rare. A dab of lard for shine, and pinching your cheeks until you look less like a ghost and more like someone who eats actual fruit. Perfume? Best case, you've got lavender or rosemary tied around your neck. Worst case, it's whatever the kitchen's cooking, and you just hope it's not pickled onions again. If you're lucky, you snag a hand-me-down from the madam herself. A real velvet ribbon, a faded silk scarf, or, if she's feeling generous, a half-empty bottle of rose water that smells mostly of mystery and ambition. These are prized possessions, passed from worker to worker like sacred relics, and guarded with the kind of vigilance usually reserved for gold or gossip. In the end, your uniform is more than clothing. It's armor, advertisement, and, sometimes, a small act of defiance. You make do, you dress up, and you walk out each night with your chin high, ready for whatever disaster, drama, or delight medieval fashion might throw your way. And if someone judges your look, let them try finding a matching pair of socks in this house. The shift never really ends. Sleep during the day, work at night, nap when you can, and always be ready to dodge a surprise priest inspection. Meals are erratic, work is unpredictable, and the house motto is nobody leaves until the last drunk customer is out or arrested. Let's start with the morning, which, for you, is about 3 hours after most of the town has already finished its porridge and arguments. You wake up tangled in scratchy sheets, a cat on your feet, and a faint, lingering aroma of sweat, beer, and hope that never quite materialized. Your dreams are usually interrupted by someone tripping over a chamber pot or yelling, "Where's my other shoe?" through the thin curtain that pretends to be a wall. Privacy is a fantasy. Breakfast, if you're lucky, is cold stew or a hunk of bread you stashed away the night before, provided the rooster hasn't claimed it for himself. The early hours are for chores, sweeping out the main room, picking up tankards, and attempting to convince the windows to open more than 3 inches. You and the others take turns laundering dresses in the courtyard, which mostly means beating them against a rock and praying that medieval stains aren't permanent. On laundry days, the backyard looks like a flag festival for countries that have given up. If anyone's caught with a comb, there's a long line of hair that needs delousing, and everyone's grumbling about whose turn it is to check the mattresses for stowaway fleas. By midday, the house is full of shifting bodies. Someone's always sleeping off a rough night, others are prepping for the next shift, and a few are up and about, fixing hems, patching stockings, or braiding hair while sharing the previous night's wildest gossip. This is also prime time for household drama. Debates over missing money, loud arguments over who borrowed whose scarf, and the time-honored tradition of pretending not to notice when someone's crying in the kitchen. Lunch is an optimistic term. Sometimes it's soup, sometimes it's just ale and a prayer. Most meals are communal. Everyone crowding around the battered table, swapping stories and making fun of the cook, who is both beloved and feared. If there's something edible left after the midday rush, you eat fast. Because the house parrot has learned how to steal bread and nobody trusts the cheese. By late afternoon, the house is preparing for business. Everyone scrambles to look presentable, which, in this context, means less bedraggled than usual. Faces are washed in cold water, dresses are retied, and the lucky few who still have perfume ration it like gold. This is the closest the house comes to a spa day. 1 bucket of water, 2 combs, and enough gossip to power a small town. Then the sun sets and the real work begins. Customers drift in, merchants with loose coins, traveling minstrels looking for a free meal, and the occasional knight who still thinks a bath is optional. You work the room with your best smile, telling jokes, pouring drinks, and mastering the fine art of acting fascinated by stories about sheep, war wounds, or someone's fascinating collection of rare rocks. Sometimes the job feels like bartending, sometimes it feels like babysitting, and sometimes it's just a waiting game for closing time. But the night isn't just about customers. It's also about managing the chaos. Someone will inevitably start a fight. Someone else will try to sneak out without paying. A local priest may wander in by accident and ask for a cup of wine, while loudly proclaiming he's just here to save souls. The house rules kick in, nobody leaves alone, and if trouble breaks out, everyone backs each other up, sometimes with a rolling pin, sometimes just with a well-timed glare. You're on your feet until the candles burn down and the last customer is ushered out, whether willingly or by gentle persuasion. Red, being dumped in a barrel and rolled into the street. Only then can you collapse onto your cot, toes throbbing, ears ringing, and mind replaying the day's absurdities. But sleep? That's a gamble. There's always someone laughing, arguing, or trying to catch the rooster. The cycle never truly stops. Dawn arrives, blurry and unkind, and you start again, running on grit, a little stubbornness, and the shared humor that somehow keeps you all from losing your minds. Because in the medieval night shift, there's no such thing as off the clock. Only the next story, the next meal, and the next unpredictable dawn. It's not all candlelit romance. Sometimes you're flirting with traveling merchants, sometimes you're dodging pickpockets, and sometimes you're hiding in a closet from your own landlord. Your job description is part therapist, part actor, part emergency plumber, and part medieval motivational speaker. Let's break down the actual night shift. You clock in, metaphorically, since medieval timekeeping is just someone yelling, "It's getting dark," out the window. You straighten your dress, pinch your cheeks for that healthy look, and brace yourself for the unpredictable chaos of the medieval nightlife. Your first task is usually working the main room, greeting new arrivals, making sure regulars feel seen, and deciding which of the local musicians gets to play indoors and which is politely told to keep their loot in the alley. There's a lot of juggling, glasses, egos, and occasionally an actual jug of ale that's leaking from both ends. You quickly discover that being a lady of the night is less about glamour and more about customer service. Sometimes you're a shoulder to cry on, sometimes a professional secret keeper, sometimes just an audience for a merchant who absolutely must recount the details of his new shipment of turnips. You nod, you listen, you offer comforting noises, and you become an expert at saying, "Wow, that sounds fascinating," without rolling your eyes. Some nights, you spend more time hearing about lost wives, failed harvests, or dreams of becoming the town's second-best cobbler than doing anything remotely romantic. The job isn't just talking, though. There's a practical, hands-on side, literally. You sweep floors between customers, tidy up after spontaneous arm wrestling matches, and help fish small valuables, and occasionally customers, out of inconvenient places. The water for washing? Icy cold. The soap? More wishful thinking than chemistry. You scrub, you mend, and you hope you're not the one who has to unclog the chamber pot this week. If the night is slow, you double as entertainment. Singing, dancing, or telling bawdy jokes you learned from a nun who used to have a wilder life. Of course, you're also a master of safety and subtlety. You learn the fine art of spotting trouble. The customer who's had too much wine, the pickpocket with suspiciously fast hands, or the traveling peddler who thinks no means maybe. When things get tense, you signal to the others. Maybe a cough, maybe a knock on the wall, maybe just a well-placed glare that says, "Back off," or you'll be explaining yourself to Alice and her infamous kitchen ladle. Teamwork is essential, and the house runs on a silent code of glances and inside jokes. Occasionally, the night delivers real surprises. A midnight visit from the city guards, who always need checking on the back rooms. A nobleman in disguise who thinks nobody recognizes him. Everyone does. Or the arrival of a mysterious traveler who pays with gold coins and stories about faraway lands. These are the nights you all talk about for weeks, spinning the tales bigger and bolder each time. If you're especially unlucky, the landlord arrives demanding back rent, at which point the entire house suddenly becomes experts in hide and seek, vanishing into cupboards, laundry bins, and any room that's technically under renovation, and through it all, you keep up the performance. Some customers want laughter, others want a confidant, and a few just want someone to remind them they're not completely alone. You become an emotional shapeshifter, soothing, scolding, or seducing as needed, all while keeping one ear tuned to the back door and another to the kitchen, just in case the stew tries to escape again. The truth is, most of your night is spent improvising, reading moods, dodging disasters, and making sure everyone gets home with their shoes, dignity, and at least half their money intact. By the end of your shift, you've played so many roles you barely remember your own. And when the candles finally sputter out and the last song is sung, you realize you haven't just survived another night, you've performed it. Medieval job satisfaction, low on pay, high on stories. Customers range from lonely widowers to swaggering knights to that one local who only pays in potatoes. You quickly learn the difference between a big spender, a bad tipper, and someone who's about to steal your only comb. Discretion is key, unless it's a slow night and you want a good story for the next breakfast. The nightly parade starts early, with the regulars trickling in like clockwork. First through the door is usually old Tom, the widower who brings gifts no one wants. Last week it was a dead squirrel. This week it's a poem he definitely copied off a church door. He doesn't say much, just sits by the fire and sighs dramatically every 20 minutes. He pays on time, which is more than you can say for some nobles. Then there's the swaggering knight, Sir Roland, or Sir Looks at himself as everyone calls him behind his back. He stomps in, helmet under one arm, sword clanging off every piece of furniture. His entrance is always loud and often damp, thanks to the medieval rain, and his absolute refusal to learn what a doormat is. Roland talks a big game, but when it comes time to pay, his purse is mysteriously at the castle. You'd refuse service, but he's good for the gossip and once brought a wheel of cheese the size of a small child. The clientele is a rotating cast. Some are traveling merchants, eager to spend coin, and even more eager to tell you about their latest deal involving 5 sheep and an extremely rare turnip. They brag, they barter, and they always want a discount. Sometimes you get artists or musicians, drifters who can't pay but offer to serenade you instead, which is great if you like hearing 3 songs about lost shoes and tragic bread. Farmers stop by after market day, pockets jingling with copper and dirt, looking for an evening of warmth, conversation, and stew that doesn't taste like home. They're straightforward, polite, and, crucially, have never tried to pay with a chicken, at least not more than once. The real wild cards are the students from the nearby monastery, eager to gain life experience, and always nervous that someone will recognize them and tell the abbot. You learn not to ask too many questions and to double-check their pockets for stolen forks. Of course, every town has its eccentrics. The local with the potato obsession, who always pays in root vegetables and expects you to be grateful for the variety. He claims each potato is magical. So far, the only magic is their ability to sprout more potatoes in the pantry overnight. Then there's Agnes the herbalist, who comes for advice, leaves a jar of something that's probably medicinal, and always wants to talk about dreams involving goats and moonlight. Every brothel is also a community advice center, whether you like it or not. And then there are the big spenders, a wealthy merchant, a bored noblewoman in disguise, or a visiting tax collector looking to spend the king's coin. These clients are rare, but they tip well and sometimes leave behind gifts far more valuable than money, information, invitations to parties, or a heads up when the local authorities plan to inspect the district. These are the nights you dress a little better and rehearse your best stories. On the flip side, there are the bad tippers, the ones who think a wink is payment enough, or who leave you a valuable stone that turns out to be just another lump from the street. You learn to spot these types by the third word out of their mouth, and the whole house has a running tally of which customer owes the most, and which is most likely to return with a mysterious rash. And, of course, sometimes your own landlord shows up, demanding rent and pretending he's just here for the music. You pretend you believe him, pour him a cup of weak ale, and make a mental note to hide your money somewhere less obvious next time. At the end of the night, you add up the coins, laugh about the stories, and swap notes on who's actually trustworthy and who's about to pawn your last hairpin. Because the medieval brothel isn't just a workplace, it's a front-row seat to the entire human condition. Generous, ridiculous, desperate, and, occasionally, paying in potatoes. Every brothel has its own rules, most of which are written in a language only the madam understands. No fighting, no stealing, no throwing turnips out the window. Local law enforcement swings by for bribes or quality checks, and you learn to keep your paperwork as forged as possible. Let's start with the house rules, posted in the kitchen, scrawled on parchment, and, if you're new, delivered in a brisk, whispered summary by the oldest resident over a mug of watery ale. Rule number 1. Respect the madam. She's part manager, part mother, and part loan shark with a heart of gold-plated iron. Her word is law, her ledger is sacred, and her shoe-throwing arm is legendary. If she catches you breaking a rule, the punishment is swift and creative. Think mopping floors with your petticoat, or scrubbing the privies with your own toothbrush. Yes, even in the Middle Ages, there were toothbrushes. No, you don't want to borrow anyone else's. Rule 2. Don't steal from your sisters. Steal from customers, landlords, or the visiting bishop if you can get away with it. But never from your housemates. Breaking this rule earns you the silent treatment, a punishment so severe you'll be begging for actual exile within a day. Rule 3. No open flames near the curtains. This isn't just for fire safety. It's because the curtains double as both privacy screens and extra blankets during winter, and the last thing anyone wants is another round of communal fire bucket relay at 3 a.m. The unwritten rules are just as important. Don't hog the good comb. Don't hide the nice wine. Always warn the next person if you see a rat in the bread bin. No loud arguing during prayer time or while the madam is negotiating rent with the landlord. And for the love of all that is holy, never let the house rooster near the stew again after the incident. But the real rules are about surviving the law of the land, literally. Medieval authorities have a complicated relationship with brothels. Sometimes they're strictly forbidden, other times they're taxed, licensed, or quietly ignored, as long as everyone's discreet and keeps the noise down. You never really know which way the wind is blowing until a group of guards shows up, looking for their inspection fee or hoping for a free drink and a wink. Legal paperwork is a farce. You keep a pile of forged licenses under the floorboards, some dating back 3 monarchs, others written in such bad Latin that even the priest laughs when he reads them. But it doesn't matter, because most of the time, the law only cares when it needs extra cash or a convenient scapegoat. The trick is to look official enough that no one wants to ask questions. If the tax collector shows up, you offer him the special wine diluted, naturally, hand him a silver coin, and assure him you're just running a boarding house for wayward seamstresses. He nods, pockets the coin, and writes down all is well. If trouble does come, usually in the form of a raid during a festival or a crackdown before a church holiday, you have a system. There's a bell by the door, a code word, the bishops come for tea, and a practice drill that gets everyone into their most innocent outfits, and the back rooms looking as dull and pious as possible. The madam produces her book of receipts, full of imaginary customers named things like Sir John Smithson and widow Agnes Manychildren. Meanwhile, anyone with unpaid fines or a suspicious accent hides in the attic, clutching a cross and praying the guards are too hungover to check the rafters. Most nights, though, the law is less about actual crime and more about negotiation. The guards want bribes, the church wants tithes, and the town council just wants peace and quiet before midnight. You learn to grease palms, spin stories, and keep a few bottles of decent wine stashed away for emergencies. If you're really skilled, you end up on good terms with the local magistrate, who sends business your way and promises to look the other way as long as nobody throws turnips from the window again. In the end, the law in a medieval brothel is less about justice and more about survival, wit, and knowing who to trust. The house rules keep the peace inside. A little silver keeps the peace outside. Just don't forget to keep your license up to date, even if you have to write it yourself. Yes, you pay taxes, sometimes to the city, sometimes to the church, sometimes just to whoever is waving a stick and asking for money. There are also unofficial taxes, bribes for the guards, tithes for the church, and the occasional protection fee for the local gang of aggressively polite monks. If you thought the modern tax code was confusing, try deciphering the medieval version, which mostly consists of threats, rumors, and the hope that no one remembers how much you really owe. In a given month, you might pay your share to the city, the official sin tax for running a brothel, which is supposed to fund important civic improvements, like fixing the pothole in front of your door, spoiler, it never gets fixed, or sponsoring the mayor's 4th cousin's poetry contest. Every week or two, a man with a parchment, a quill, and a spectacularly bad attitude knocks on the door, demands coin, and mumbles something about public decency. You pay, he nods, and the paperwork vanishes into the ether. Then there's the church. Officially, the church frowns upon your line of work. Unofficially, they're happy to accept a tithe, preferably in cash, but bread, eggs, or one discreet favor are sometimes negotiable. Confession is awkward when your priest is also your part-time landlord, but everyone pretends not to notice. On feast days, the collection plate does the rounds, and the madam makes a show of dropping in a silver coin, always just loud enough for the local busybody to witness. Your sins might not be forgiven, but your payments are very much recorded. Not all taxes are so official. The city guards are always happy to accept security payments, especially after dark. For a few coppers, they'll look the other way when your customers spill out onto the street, singing questionable songs and attempting to ride the house rooster. Sometimes the guards drop hints about upcoming inspections so you can tidy up the paperwork or bribe them in advance. The madam keeps a special purse in the pantry, labeled emergencies, which everyone knows is really the Keep the Peace Fund. And then there are the monks. Yes, monks. The local abbey has a side hustle, offering protection to sinful establishments. Don't pay, and you'll find mysterious warnings carved into your door. Do pay, and you get a weekly visit from 3 monks in spotless robes, all smiles and pious greetings. Collecting their donation. They always compliment the stew, threaten the tax collector under their breath, and then politely ask if anyone needs a blessing or a new window fixed for a small extra fee. It's the most wholesome shakedown in town. There are even more creative ways the town squeezes you for cash. If the river floods, expect a levy fee for repairs, even if the only thing underwater is your laundry line. If the bishop's visiting, suddenly everyone's being taxed for public decorum, which mostly means bribing local children to keep quiet about who spends the most time in your parlor. And once a year, a very important person comes around collecting market fees, even though you haven't sold a single turnip, just to remind you who's really in charge. Paying these endless demands isn't just about keeping out of trouble, it's survival. The house keeps ledgers, but even the best record keeper gets creative with the math. 1 silver coin goes to the city, 1 to the church, 2 for the guards, and anything left is split between the staff, who immediately spend it on bread, candles, and the hope of new shoes. Every so often someone tries to dodge a payment, thinking they can outsmart the system. They learn fast. The local officials have memories like elephants and grudges like X's. Forget a tithe, and the next day, your best sheets are hanging in the wind, courtesy of a mysterious inspection. Try to skip a bribe, and the guards suddenly forget who you are the next time there's a disturbance at your door. It's all exhausting, absurd, and so unrelenting that you start dreaming of a future where taxes are paid by sending a letter or clicking a button. But for now, you keep a pouch of coins hidden in your shift, practice your most innocent smile, and prepare to answer the door to whoever's knocking, palm out, with a new reason why your money should really belong to them. Because in medieval times, the only things more certain than death are taxes, and the fact that no matter how much you pay, it's never quite enough. Bathing is a luxury. Perfume is vinegar with ambition. The house offers a weekly group bath, which is part social event, part game of what is that floating next to me? You do your best with herbs, cold water, and the hope that everyone else smells just as bad. Medieval hygiene is a complicated ritual of compromise, superstition, and denial. Soap exists, technically, but good luck finding any that isn't grey, lumpy, and laced with so much lie, it could strip paint from the church door. Most people just accept their natural aroma as part of their identity. And if you smell faintly of onions and last week's ale, well, that's practically a status symbol. The group bath is a spectacle. The wooden tub is dragged into the main room, filled with water hauled from the nearest well. And let's just say that water has seen things. Heating it involves half a dozen women fighting over the biggest kettle and the madam yelling, "Don't burn the bottom again!" Inevitably, someone drops a sock in, or the house rooster decides it's a new drinking bowl, so by the time everyone finally sits down, the bath is less spa, more medieval minestrone. You undress in stages, peeling off layers that haven't seen sunlight since Lent. Privacy is non-existent. The youngest girls shriek and giggle, the older women argue about the best way to scrub away bad luck, and someone always brings a homemade herbal blend that turns the water a color never seen in nature. The bath itself is less about getting clean and more about gossip, negotiations, and the general therapy of mutual complaining. For day-to-day washing, it's all about spot cleaning. You take a damp rag to your face, your hands, your most important regions, and you call it a win if you can find a patch of clean cloth. Hair is a special project. Lice combs are communal and treated with the respect usually reserved for family heirlooms. Flea powder is a blend of whatever the herbalist has lying around: lavender, ashes, a little magic, and a prayer. If it burns, you pretend it's working. Clothes get washed when they can't stand up on their own anymore, and the process is a medieval CrossFit challenge. Soak in cold water, scrub on a washboard with lye or sand, wring until your arms ache, then hang everything outside to freeze or, if you're lucky, dry in the sun. Underwear, for those who have it, is swapped between shifts so often that nobody is quite sure whose is whose. There are rumors that the madam can tell just by sniffing, but nobody wants to test her on this. And then there's perfume. In theory, it's herbs tied around your neck. Maybe a dab of rosewater behind the ears if you're feeling posh. In practice, it's whatever's on hand. Vinegar, stale ale, wildflowers, or, if desperate, a clove of garlic, which at least keeps the customers and evil spirits at bay. Tooth care is wishful thinking. If you're lucky, you chew mint or sage, or rub your teeth with a rag. Most people's smiles look like a haunted fence. Breath fresheners include wine, strong ale, or simply standing farther away from the person you're talking to. Personal grooming is public business. Shaving legs? Only if there's a special festival. Armpits? Covered by layers, ignored by all. Splinters, scratches, and mysterious rashes are compared, discussed, and, if necessary, treated by the house's designated medical expert, usually the cook, whose main cure is put a hot potato on it and see what happens. Despite all this, you manage. You learn to embrace a certain level of grime as protection against the world and the winter. The goal isn't to be clean. It's to be clean enough not to be the worst smelling person in the room. You take pride in little victories. Unsticky hair, hands that don't itch, or the discovery of a patch of skin that's actually your natural color. Hygiene here isn't about perfection. It's about survival, humor, and the comforting knowledge that, at the end of the day, everyone smells like boiled herbs and optimism. If you want glamour, try the castle. If you want reality, come to the brothel bath night and bring your own soap. Safety is relative. There are locks on the doors, a dog with one eye, and a house code word, the bishop's coming. You trust no one except maybe the cook, who doubles as the bouncer and once fought off a robber with nothing but a wooden spoon and a righteous sense of annoyance. In the medieval brothel, security system means a door that closes, mostly, a bolt that only sticks sometimes, and a sturdy chair jammed under the handle for good measure. The windows are small and high up, mostly to keep the cold out and the more determined clients from climbing in after hours. If you're lucky, the shutters close tight. If not, you add carpentry to the ever-growing list of things you never wanted to learn. The resident dog, one eye, 3 working legs, and a bark that sounds like a chronic cough, is both mascot and early warning system. He's a survivor, just like you. And he patrols the halls at night, sniffing out trouble and leftover bread with equal dedication. Nobody's sure how old he is, or even who he belongs to. But the one time someone tried to steal a coin purse, he latched onto the culprit's ankle and refused to let go until paid off with a sausage. Since then, his reputation is legendary. He gets first pick of the firewood spot and a scratch behind the ears from everyone, even the tax collector. The real enforcer, though, is the cook. A mountain of a woman who can chop onions, knead bread, and break up a brawl without breaking a sweat. She has a 6th sense for trouble, a glare that can stop a night mid-boast, and a collection of wooden spoons she wields like medieval nunchucks. Word travels fast in the district. Cause a scene in this house, and you'll be thrown out faster than you can say, but I'm a paying customer. There's an unspoken understanding between the staff. When the cook's sleeves are rolled up, it's time to behave. Still, danger is always just a whisper away. Drunken customers can turn belligerent. Rivals might send spies to cause mischief or steal secrets. And every so often, the city guard comes through with more curiosity than courtesy. That's when the house code word comes in handy. The bishop's coming means clear out the private rooms, hide anything you can't explain, and look as pious as possible. Everyone has a role. The youngest girls light candles and start a prayer circle. The madam produces a Bible, stolen, but who's checking? And the rest of you perfect your innocent just sewing, sir faces. The buddy system is law. Nobody leaves alone after dark. And everyone knows to walk the main streets, not the alleys. The brothel runs on eyes and ears. watching for trouble before it starts, listening for raised voices, and always, always checking who's at the door before opening it. You never tell a customer where you live, never let a stranger pass the common room without the madam's nod, and never, ever let anyone see where the real money is kept. The house safe is a loose brick in the hearth, a hollowed-out leg of a stool, or a jar labelled pickled onions that nobody dares open. Trust is a rare currency. You trust your housemates, mostly because you have to, but outsiders? Not a chance. The neighborhood runs on favors, rumors, and the occasional well-timed threat. If something feels off, a new customer with too many questions, a visitor who never takes off his hood, you mention it at dinner, and everyone keeps an extra eye on the door that night. Sometimes, safety means compromise. Maybe you smile at the guard who walks you home. Maybe you let the landlord have his free cup of ale. Maybe you promise a discount to the butcher in exchange for news about a rival house. You do what you must, because in this world, survival comes before pride. And on those nights when things go sideways, a fight breaks out, someone tries to force their way in, or the tax collector arrives with friends, you lock arms, back each other up, and remember, no one messes with the house. Not if they value their ankles, their dignity, or their hope of ever getting a decent stew in this town again. So you do what medieval women have always done. Make allies. Keep secrets. Trust your instincts. And carry a wooden spoon. Because in the end, safety isn't about locks and walls. It's about looking out for each other. And knowing someone always has your back, even if it's just the dog. Reputation is everything. Your social network is faster than carrier pigeons and twice as judgmental. Secrets spread like fleas. And alliances shift faster than the cook's mood swings. If you hear your name in a story at the tavern, it's either time to celebrate or time to move. In the medieval red light district, gossip isn't just background noise, it's the main soundtrack. You learn quickly that what people think of you can mean the difference between an easy night and a week spent dodging dirty looks and suspicious questions. Your reputation is your resume, your armor, and sometimes your undoing, all rolled into one. A clever joke, a kind deed, or a bit of sharp wit can earn you more business than a new dress. But one poorly timed insult or an overheard secret in the wrong ear, and suddenly you're the talk of the street for all the wrong reasons. The brothel runs on information. Breakfast starts with porridge and ends with a full debrief of last night's rumors. Who came in after midnight? Who left with their shoes, but not their dignity? Who was seen arguing with the city guard by the river? It's like a daily newspaper, except you have to supply your own ink, and the headlines are mostly about whose stew gave everyone the runs. A good reputation means steady work, a bit of respect, and the security of knowing that if anyone says something truly outlandish about you, half the town will defend you, or at least argue about it loudly at the bakery. You want to be known as clever, trustworthy, and maybe a little mysterious. A hint of scandal is fine, actually. It's recommended, but too much, and you're suddenly that girl, the one mothers warn their daughters about and merchants warn their purses against. But there's a dark side. One slip, one misunderstood gesture, and the stories start growing legs. Maybe you snubbed a local merchant who tried to pay in potatoes, or you accidentally called the tax collector's wife a mule in a dress. To be fair, it was a really bad dress. By sunset, the entire neighborhood's discussing whether you're cursed, a secret princess in hiding, or just plain trouble. It's not just the customers and neighbors. Your fellow workers have long memories and sharp tongues. Alliances shift with the moon. One day, you're sharing hair ribbons and trading tips on how to flirt with a grumpy farmer. The next, you're on opposite sides of an argument over missing wine or who got the best room during the festival. But even rivals know. Betray someone badly enough, and your own reputation is finished. There's an unwritten code. No revealing the really dark secrets. No setting up a friend for trouble. and no sharing customer confessions unless you want to be on the wrong end of a midnight cold water accident. The taverns are the echo chambers of the district. Sit quietly with your ale, and you'll hear stories about yourself you barely recognize. Did you really spend a night dancing with a masked stranger? Did you outwit the mayor in a contest of riddles? Or is it just another legend growing legs as it makes the rounds? Sometimes you play along, embellishing your own reputation with a wink and a well-timed sigh. Sometimes it's damage control, pulling aside the town gossiper, offering her the last piece of honey cake, and suggesting that maybe, just maybe, there's a juicier story involving the rival brothel 2 streets over. Customers, too, are obsessed with reputation. They want to be seen with the most popular lady, or to avoid being recognized entirely. You master the art of discretion, inventing new names, new stories, and, occasionally, new accents, depending on who's listening. And if all else fails, you have the house pet rooster as your unofficial press secretary. Blame it for any odd rumors, and soon enough, you'll hear about the time it supposedly laid a golden egg or cursed a rival madam with boils. So you learn to live with the gossip, to steer it when you can, and to laugh at it when you can't. Reputation is a fickle beast, one you feed with stories, protect with kindness, and, if needed, revive with a little mischief and a very public prank involving the landlord's trousers. Because in this world, everyone is watching, everyone is talking, and the only thing faster than gossip is how quickly your fortunes can change if you play the game well. Meals are communal, random, and often a little experimental. Dinner might be thick stew, cold bread, or whatever the neighbor's goat didn't finish. You learn to love garlic, onions, and anything that can be boiled long enough to kill the flavor and hopefully the bacteria. The first rule of brothel dining: eat fast, don't ask questions, and never get attached to a favorite dish. Each meal is a group event, everyone crowded around a battered wooden table, bowls in hand, elbows out, and eyes darting to make sure nobody swipes the last chunk of meat. Pro tip: it's probably not meat. Conversation is lively, especially if the stew is more mysterious than usual. Is that mutton or mushroom? Don't think about it. Just chew. Breakfast is optimistic. If you're lucky, it's porridge that's only slightly burnt, topped with a hint of honey if the madam's in a generous mood. More often, it's just cold bread, heavy as a brick and twice as hard, with a chunk of cheese that's probably seen more winters than the cook. Fresh fruit is a legend from the land of nobles and fairies. Your vitamins come from onions, leeks, and hope. If you're desperate for variety, you dig into last night's leftovers, reheated until even the rats look uninterested. The main event is the evening meal. Every night, a giant pot simmers in the corner, bubbling away with whatever could be scavenged from the market, begged off a neighbor, or left behind by a particularly generous customer. Into the pot goes everything: turnips, old carrots, a handful of dried beans, stale bread, bits of salt pork, when there's money, and always garlic. Garlic covers a multitude of culinary sins, including the taste of nearly rotten cabbage or the faint afterglow of last week's failed fish surprise. Meat is a treat, not a guarantee. When it does appear, there's a debate. Is it rabbit, chicken, or a very unlucky alley cat? You don't ask, and neither does anyone else. The madam claims she has a man at the market who gives her a deal. Translation: she's very persuasive, or very mysterious, or both. On rare feast days, there's something truly special. Maybe roast goose, maybe just a fresh egg or two. These nights are celebrated with song, laughter, and a sprint to claim the last piece before the cook does. Bread is a constant companion, flat, heavy, and capable of cracking a tooth if you're not careful. Slices are hacked off with a dull knife, sometimes softened with broth, sometimes just gnawed on out of sheer stubbornness. Butter is a fantasy. Lard is more common, though nobody likes to admit it. Cheese is a delicacy when it isn't blue for the wrong reasons. Drinks are strictly practical. Water is risky, flavorful with whatever's upstream. So weak ale is the beverage of choice, brewed in the back room and served in whatever cup isn't currently doubling as a candle holder. Wine appears only when a customer brings it, and it's usually so sour that it's best enjoyed with your nose pinched. Snacking is creative. Leftovers are rare, so you make do with roasted beans, a stolen apple, or dried peas pilfered from the pantry. Every now and then, someone sneaks in a treat from the market, a sweet bun or candied nut, which is shared in whispers like a secret love letter. But the heart of every meal is the ritual of sharing. Food may be questionable, but eating together is non-negotiable. You swap stories, plot revenge on the rooster, and toast to surviving another day. Complaints are aired freely about the stew, the cold, or the fact that someone keeps hiding the salt. Sometimes, if the mood is right, the cook will let you stir the pot, an honor that usually comes with a lecture on not burning the bottom this time. Despite it all, meals are moments of comfort and community. A pause in the endless cycle of work and worry. Because in a medieval brothel, you may not always know what's in your bowl, but you know who's sitting at your table. And that, most days, is all the nourishment you really need. Getting sick is almost inevitable. Remedies range from drink this wine to put a hot onion on it. The local doctor is also the town barber. And the only prescription you can actually afford is a good night's sleep. Rare, but technically possible if the beds aren't moving on their own. If you're living in a medieval brothel, you quickly learn that your immune system is the true MVP. Sore throats? Normal. Strange rashes? Expected. Headaches, backaches, mysterious spots, and the occasional mystery bite, just part of the scenery. Your biggest health threats aren't heartbreak or scandal, they're cold drafts, questionable meat, and that one customer who won't stop coughing. Let's start with the doctor, if you can call him that. His office is a chair in the back of the tavern, and his credentials include a collection of rusty knives, 2 bottles of wine, and the ability to trim a beard while diagnosing too much bad air. He's barber by day, surgeon by night, and an enthusiastic proponent of bloodletting for everything from toothache to bad dreams. If you walk in with a headache, he'll offer to lance something. If you limp in with a stubbed toe, he'll offer a haircut and a prayer. Anesthesia? That's just a strong drink and someone to hold you down. The best medicine you can hope for comes from the house cook, who doubles as a herbalist, midwife, and general source of I read this in a book, once medical advice. Her solutions are practical. Wrap it, boil it, or rub something on it until it falls off or gets better. Sprains are treated with cabbage leaves and sarcasm. Fevers with a wet rag and a warning not to die in the good sheets. If you're really desperate, she might give you her special healing brew, which tastes like fermented socks and works mostly because it's so vile you forget about your original problem. Most real treatment is homegrown. Got a cough? Honey and garlic, if you can spare it. Bad back? Try stretching. Or failing that, blame it on the mattress. Cuts and bruises are washed with vinegar or the cheapest ale you can find, then covered in a clean, cleanish rag. Toothache? Wiggle the tooth and hope for the best. Or, if the pain is truly medieval, let the barber pull it out with his lucky pliers. Afterwards, a week of soup and regret. Then there's the spiritual side of medicine. People believe in humors, miasmas, and evil spirits. If a fever runs high, the priest is called in to mutter prayers, sprinkle holy water, and recommend confession just in case. Sometimes, you're given an amulet to wear around your neck or told to sleep with garlic under your pillow to ward off illness. And possibly, your roommate. If all else fails, you blame the stars, the weather, or last week's suspiciously blue cheese. Infections are the true terror. Without antibiotics, a small cut can go from annoying to deadly in days. The brothel's unofficial infirmary is just a bed by the window, reserved for anyone running a fever or sporting a new rash. The house rules: bring soup, avoid breathing too closely, and for the love of all that's holy, don't let the sick person use the good comb. Of course, there are the occasional miracles. Someone recovers from a fever with nothing but rest, chicken broth, and the stubborn will to prove the cook wrong. These rare victories are celebrated with relief, laughter, and cautious optimism until the next person starts sneezing. For long-term health, the best medicine is prevention. Eat what you can, sleep when you're able, avoid sitting in puddles, and never trust a customer who claims to know a secret remedy. At the end of the day, survival is a team effort. If you're sick, your housemates cover your chores, bring you soup, and keep your spirits up with questionable jokes and slightly off-key songs. In a world without real medicine, you make do. You endure, adapt, and, if necessary, apply a hot onion and hope for the best. Because in the medieval brothel, laughter, stubbornness, and the occasional miracle are the only things that reliably keep you alive. Wages are as reliable as medieval weather. The madam pays you in coins, promises, or sometimes just not kicking you out. Debt is a constant shadow. Room, board, clothes, and fines for breaking house rules add up faster than you can earn. Saving for the future? Adorable. Every night, you hustle for your coins. Real, physical, clinking coins that weigh down your pocket and make you feel, for a brief moment, like a minor noble or a successful chicken thief. The customers pay in whatever they have. Silver if you're lucky, copper most nights, and the occasional rare foreign coin you're pretty sure is just a flattened button. Some even try to barter, offering vegetables, eggs, or the world's most untrustworthy IOU. The madam, who keeps a ledger thicker than a priest's Bible, accepts what she must and gives you a running tally of what's yours, minus expenses, house cuts, and mysterious miscellaneous fees that seem to multiply by the hour. Your cut is never what you expect. The brothel operates like a complicated board game where the rules change every night. There's rent for your bed, a fee for every meal, yes, even the cold porridge, and deductions for services rendered. A phrase that covers everything from borrowing a dress to spilling wine on the floor. The madam can spot a missing coin from across the room, and if you're short, she simply adds it to your running tab, plus interest. Some weeks, it feels like you owe her your future grandchildren. Debt is a fact of life. Maybe you borrowed money for new shoes, or needed medicine when the mysterious rash made its rounds. Perhaps you paid a bribe to the local guard, or replaced a comb that mysteriously snapped in two during a heated debate over stew. The brothel is a place of rolling credits and quiet desperation. Everyone owes someone, and the chain of debt stretches from the lowest maid to the cook to the madam herself, who is probably in hock to the local merchant for candles and half the city council for administrative fees. Getting paid is a ritual. The madam calls everyone to the kitchen table, coin pouch in hand, ledger open, eyes narrow. She calls your name, counts out your earnings, then begins the deductions. Food, bed, rent, soap, optional, fines for being late, fines for being early, fines for looking at her the wrong way. The actual payout is a handful of coins, maybe a little bread, and a stern reminder to keep your skirts clean and your nose out of other people's business. Every so often, someone tries to save, hiding a coin in a shoe, sewing a little pouch into the hem of their dress, or stashing money in a jar of medicinal herbs nobody dares open. But somehow, the madam always finds out. She's got eyes everywhere, and the one time a girl tried to run away with her savings, she was brought back by the local guard and made to scrub the privies for a month. Now, saving is mostly just a joke you all share at dinner. But if luck is with you and you have a good run, maybe a wealthy merchant takes a shine to you, or a festival brings in a flood of customers, you might have enough to buy a new dress, a warm cloak, or a night off. For some, It's just enough to dream about paying off the debt and starting fresh somewhere new. For others, it's one more week survived. One more step on the endless treadmill of earning, owing, and trying to stay a little ahead of the madam's ledger. The truth is, money flows through your hands like water through a sieve, gone before you can count it, always chased by another bill. Debt is the great equalizer. No matter how much you make, you're always one disaster away from being right back where you started. But even so, when the coins clink into your palm, you can't help but smile. For tonight at least, you've earned your keep. And in this world, that's worth more than gold. Not everyone's here just for business. Sometimes a regular customer falls in love. Sometimes a housemate gets married, rare but possible. And sometimes someone tries to leave it all behind for a better life as a fishmonger's wife. Spoiler: the grass is only greener because it's covered in manure. You'd think a medieval brothel would be the last place for romance. But love has a way of showing up where it's least expected. Usually after 3 cups of weak ale and a chorus of questionable lute music. Some customers come looking for more than company. They want to be listened to, seen, or maybe just told their receding hairline is noble and mysterious. And sometimes, against all common sense, feelings bloom in the most inconvenient of places. The regulars are the most dangerous. They know your favorite drink, the story you always tell when the stew is particularly grim, and the exact way to make you laugh at midnight. Some fall hard, convinced that you're their one true love, destined to run off together and open a bakery in Bruges. Most are harmless dreamers, lonely widowers, traveling merchants, or failed poets who write sonnets about your eyes and slip them under the door. They're always about your eyes, never your practical bunions. And then there are the genuine flings. Maybe a housemate finds a sweetheart in the neighborhood, a blacksmith's apprentice with big arms and bigger dreams. Or the barmaid from the corner tavern who brings leftover pastries and a sharp tongue. The house treats these budding romances like rare flowers, admired from a distance, sometimes watered with envy, and usually trampled underfoot by the realities of rent, debt, and house rules about no swooning before chores are done. Every so often, the unthinkable happens. Someone actually gets married. The event is treated like a minor miracle, celebrated with borrowed flowers, a surplus of wine, and at least 2 new songs invented on the spot. The bride wears her least stained dress. The groom is nervous, and the whole house oscillates between laughter and envy. The madam is usually supportive, provided the rent is paid in advance and someone volunteers to clean up after the festivities. The newlyweds often promise to visit, and sometimes they even do, mostly to borrow bread. But for most, love is less about grand gestures and more about small mercies. A secret smile, a stolen kiss in the alley, or an extra blanket on a cold night. Friendships, too, run deep. Housemates share heartbreaks, bad dates, and romantic disasters, swapping advice that ranges from marry rich, if you can, to never trust a man with more rings than fingers. You become experts at reading each other's moods and covering for a friend who needs a night off to nurse a broken heart. Leaving for love is the dream. Someone always has a plan: run away to the countryside, start fresh as a baker's assistant, or marry the fishmonger with the world's most impressive cod. But medieval life is rarely that generous. Those who leave often return, sometimes with a new baby, sometimes with a wild story about how things are different outside the city they aren't, and sometimes just with a quiet longing for the warmth and chaos of the only family they've ever known. There are heartbreaks too. Lovers betray, sweethearts vanish, and promises are as flimsy as the curtains between the beds. But for every disappointment, there's a song, a joke, a hand to hold when the tears come after midnight. Hope, stubborn and ridiculous, survives everything. Because even in a world of deals, debts, and drudgery, romance finds a way, awkward, messy, often ill-advised, but fiercely real. Love in the brothel isn't what the bards sing about, but it's as vital as bread and twice as memorable. In the end, whether you stay or leave, you carry those stories, and sometimes a love letter or two tucked away with your savings, just in case the fishmonger comes calling again. Faith is complicated when your day job is a sin, your best friend is a nun's sister, and your landlord is also the choir director. Prayers are said nightly, mostly for forgiveness, safety, or a chance at better tips. Confession is tricky, and the priest's advice is usually try harder. Religion in the brothel is an exercise in creative accounting. 1 part hope, 1 part guilt, and 2 parts bargaining. You live in a world where salvation and sin are measured in the same breath. The church bells mark your days and nights, tolling out the hours for morning prayers, vespers, and, occasionally, a discreet knock on the back door from someone who just wants to talk about their soul. Sundays are officially holy, but so are rent days, feast days, and any day when the cook's soup doesn't kill someone. Each night, as the lamps are snuffed and the curtains drawn, the house gathers for a brief, unofficial service. The prayers are simple: protect us from the guards, the landlord, and the stew. Forgive our debts and our customers, even the one who tried to pay in radishes. Everyone bows their head and sneaks a peek at the door, hoping no one is listening. Superstition and faith mingle together. Rosaries hung on bedposts, a sprig of rosemary tucked under the pillow, and the quiet ritual of tracing a cross on the door before bed. It's less about piety and more about hedging your bets. Guilt is the background noise of the profession. The church preaches fire and brimstone, but you learn to navigate the grey areas. Some nights, you confess silently, whispering hopes for forgiveness or just a better tomorrow. Other times, you skip the prayers and just hope your feet stop hurting. The priest visits now and then, collecting tithes and making vague suggestions about turning your life around. He's got advice for every occasion, but his main counsel, try harder, is less than helpful when the rent is due, and the landlord is warming up his hymn book for a passive-aggressive serenade. There are moments of deep conflict. You want to be good, but good doesn't always pay the bills. You attend Mass, keep the fasts, and cross yourself before every meal, even the suspicious ones. When feast days come, the house makes an effort. Candles are lit, hymns are hummed, and the madam reads a psalm from a borrowed book. It's comforting, in its own ramshackle way, to know that even the fallen get to participate in the grand drama of faith, even if only from the cheap seats. The relationship with the local nuns is complicated. On the one hand, they deliver soup and blankets during the winter, whisper prayers for your souls, and sometimes pass along news from the outside world. On the other, they never quite meet your eyes, and their visits are always brief, like they're worried about catching more than just gossip. The nuns' sisters in the house joke about buy one, get one free salvation, but everyone knows the real gift is a listening ear when things go sideways. Confession is an adventure. The priest sits in his box, listening with varying degrees of horror, and every week there's the awkward moment when you confess the same sins, but he's more interested in how business is going. "Any new faces at the house?" he'll ask, before mumbling the standard penance and hurrying off to scold the choir boys. You wonder sometimes if he's tallying your misdeeds on a ledger somewhere, but the truth is, he probably loses track after the third story about the landlord and his midnight collection rounds. In the end, faith in the brothel is more about community than doctrine. You pray together, you hope together, and you learn to live with the contradictions. You hold on to the idea that everyone deserves a little grace, especially those who can't afford to pay for it. Your faith might be battered, a little bit second-hand, but it's real. It's the thread that ties you to your past, your future, and to the other women who share the same fragile hope that, one day, forgiveness will be just another story to laugh about after supper. Sometimes the clergy show up for spiritual outreach. Sometimes they're here for business. Either way, it's best to act humble, keep your head down, and never mention that time you saw the bishop without his hat or his pants. In medieval brothel life, a visit from the church is always an event, equal parts threat, spectacle, and, on rare occasions, unintentional comedy. The first sign is the smell of incense drifting down the street, thick enough to smother even the aroma of garlic and regret wafting from the kitchen. Next come the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and unmistakably self-important. You've barely had time to stuff your more risque clothing under the mattress before a parade of black-robed priests marches into the parlor, trailed by nervous altar boys and the world's most judgmental deacon. Spiritual outreach, they call it. This usually means the parish priest pops in to remind everyone of their eternal souls. Though it's amazing how often these reminders coincide with major church feasts or collection weeks. He lectures about sin, redemption, and the dangers of impure living, eyes never quite meeting anyone's gaze, especially if the madam is present, arms crossed and eyebrow raised. Every sermon ends with a pointed reminder to attend Mass and a subtle request for donations. The hat is passed around, and the house always manages to find a few coins, miraculously produced from the same purse set aside for emergencies and bribe the town guard day. Business calls are even more awkward. Officially, the clergy are here to inspect and advise for the sake of public morality. Unofficially, they're checking up on their own interests, collecting tithes, dropping hints about discreet services required for certain members of the church, or arranging for a private back room for deep contemplation. These visits are accompanied by knowing glances and long silences, broken only by the creak of ancient floorboards and the occasional muffled giggle from the kitchen. The bishop, when he visits, arrives in full regalia, a walking contradiction of piety and pomp, his rings gleaming, his staff shining, and his nerves shot. He always insists on tea, which the cook brews strong enough to put hair on a statue. While he pontificates about virtue and duty, the house cat inevitably rubs against his boots, reminding everyone that the feline, at least, is unimpressed by ecclesiastical rank. Sometimes the church brings gifts, leftover bread, a jar of pickled onions, or a basket of apples with more worms than fruit. You accept these with a practiced smile, exchange polite pleasantries, and quietly trade stories about which friar is most likely to trip on the threshold. Other times, the visit is purely transactional. The church needs candles. Can we count on your support? You nod, cough up a few more coins, and add donate to the church to your running tally of monthly expenses. But there's always an edge to these encounters. The church holds power over your business, your reputation, and, if rumors are to be believed, your soul. Too much resistance means trouble, accusations, investigations, or a stern talking to from the archdeacon, who smells suspiciously of spiced wine and old laundry. Too much friendliness, and you risk becoming the local example of fallen women in need of reform. You walk a narrow line, all smiles and respectful silence, hands folded in your lap as the clergy drone on about sin and salvation. Still, there's a strange camaraderie in these visits. The madam stands her ground, the house offers hospitality, and the churchmen, deep down, know they're part of the same tapestry of village life as you are. Everyone plays their part. They admonish, you repent, just enough, and the world keeps spinning. The bishop collects his hat, and, hopefully, his pants. The priests depart with a pie for the rectory, and the house breathes a collective sigh of relief. Because after all, in medieval life, church and brothel exist side by side. An odd, awkward partnership where everyone pretends, everyone pays, and everyone remembers to keep the best stories for when the candles are low and the doors are safely shut. Office drama, but with more slapping. Rival houses compete for business. Madams negotiate territory. And you learn to navigate arguments over soap, socks, and who gets the window bed. HR is just the oldest woman in the house, threatening to throw everyone's shoes into the street. Welcome to medieval brothel politics. Less corporate ladder, more who can climb the fastest when someone yells, "The guards are coming." The day-to-day running of the house is a lesson in chaos management, power plays, and creative negotiation. Madams are the unofficial mayors of the red light district, setting house policies, brokering truces, and making sure their staff don't throw chamber pots at the competition again. Every brothel has its alliances and feuds. There's always a rival house 2 streets over, with flashier curtains, slightly warmer stew, and a madam who swears she can spot a fake coin from 50 paces. The competition is fierce, who can attract the richest merchant, charm the visiting knight, or snatch up the last shipment of not entirely mouldy bread from the market. Sometimes, wars are waged in whispers and looks. Other times, it's a full-blown shouting match in the middle of the street over whose girls sing better drinking songs. Inside, the pecking order is as delicate as a spiderweb. Seniority counts for everything. The oldest resident, HR, in the loosest possible sense, keeps track of who broke which rule, who borrowed whose dress, and who's behind on their share of the cleaning. She has the unique power to settle arguments with a single, thunderous glare, or, if all else fails, a threat to toss every shoe, stocking, and ribbon out the window for the pigeons to judge. Miraculously, this works every time. House meetings are regular but rarely productive. The madam calls everyone to the kitchen to address important matters. Usually missing towels, someone's mysterious rash, or the new rule about not letting the cat nap in the communal breadbasket. Voices rise, hands wave, and someone inevitably brings up the window bed, prime real estate, fought over with more passion than the last roast chicken. Everyone argues their case, and decisions are made based on who can talk the longest without losing their breath or temper. Soap, socks, and the one working hair comb are eternal flashpoints. Accusations fly. You stole my best stockings. You hid the lye soap again. If I find my comb in your bed one more time, I'll. The last threat is always left hanging, mostly because everyone knows the real punishment is having to use the communal brush, last cleaned during the reign of a king nobody remembers. When outside drama erupts, rumors of a new brothel opening, city guards sniffing around for extra bribes, or a noblewoman's carriage caught idling in the alley, the madam rallies the troops. Assignments are handed out, alibis rehearsed, and every girl is given her best innocent face for when the officials inevitably come knocking. If all else fails, there's the backup plan. Act confused and offer them soup. Negotiating territory is a constant chess game. Sometimes, madams meet in secret to draw invisible boundaries. You get the pious merchants, I'll take the minstrels, and we split the masons on alternating Thursdays. These treaties are honored until the next scandal, price war, or someone gets wind of a traveling friar with a full purse and a taste for local company. For all the squabbles and soap wars, there's a grudging sense of solidarity. When a rival house gets raided, everyone chips in to hide valuables or sneak a warning down the street. Even HR loosens up enough to sneak a loaf of bread to a friend in trouble, before reminding everyone to sweep the floors and stop leaving turnips in her shoe basket. In the end, brothel politics are about survival, wit, and the art of compromise. You learn who to trust, who to avoid, and how to keep your shoes, quite literally, on your feet. HR may be terrifying, but she keeps the peace. And in a world where one wrong move can bring the law, the church, or the city's gossips crashing down, that's the best employee benefit you'll ever get. Raids are part of life. Sometimes the city cracks down for a festival. Sometimes the guards need extra spending money. The trick is to hide the good linens, stash the coins, and pretend you've never heard of unsanctioned pillow fighting. You learn fast that in a medieval brothel, the law is more interested in appearances and tips than justice. Raids are less about actual crime and more about keeping up public morals, or the illusion of them. The first warning is always the same. A nervous neighbor or rival madam spots a cluster of guards down the street, strutting like overfed roosters, weapons gleaming and attitudes louder than the church bells. News travels by gossip. Someone bangs on the back door, breathless, whispering, "Get ready, the law's on its way." Instantly, the house becomes a flurry of activity. Everyone has a job. The madam calls out orders like a ship's captain bracing for a storm. The innocent linens fresh, if you're lucky, or at least recently aired, are thrown over the worst of the stains. Candles are snuffed, drinks are hidden, and all evidence of last night's party, especially the goat, disappears. The valuables, the tip jar, and the best silverware vanish into the secret stash. The loose floorboard under the hearth, or the famously smelly chamber pot nobody will touch. The staff transforms. Faces are scrubbed, skirts are straightened, and everyone suddenly remembers they are, in fact, just humble seamstresses, running a respectable boarding house for wayward travellers and choirboys. You practice your most innocent expression in the cracked mirror, trying to look like you've never heard a rude joke in your life. The customers are ushered into back rooms or told to stay absolutely silent, though there's always one who can't resist peeking through the curtains or sneezing at exactly the wrong moment. You swear, someday you'll find a way to make the regulars less regular. When the guards burst in, the scene is one of almost comical innocence. The madam greets them, cool as a cucumber, and offers weak ale and cold bread, just enough hospitality to make them feel awkward about searching the place too thoroughly. The guards, meanwhile, stomp around, poking their noses into closets and lifting bedsheets with the same energy they'd bring to a pie-eating contest. Looking for evidence, they claim. Just doing our duty. In reality, they're mostly hoping for a bribe, a free meal, or a bit of gossip to take back to the barracks. If the law is in a bad mood, the questions get trickier. Who's in charge here? Any unsanctioned guests? Is it true you've been hosting illegal pillow fights again? You feign shock. Pillow fights, officer? I don't even know how to sew a pillow. You nod, smile, and never, ever offer more information than you have to. If pressed, you claim the last raucous singing was just a midnight prayer vigil. The church loves a good story. Fines are common. Sometimes the guards write up a ticket for disturbing the peace or improper curtain usage. Other times they settle for a few coins and a promise that things will be quieter next week. If you're unlucky, they confiscate the good sheets or threaten to bring the bishop along next time. Nobody wants the bishop to see the state of the mattress. The madam keeps a running tally of bribes and fees. By the end of the year, she could probably buy herself a castle or at least a goat that doesn't eat everything it sees. After the law leaves, the house erupts in laughter, groans, and a collective sigh of relief. You dig the valuables out of their hiding spots, check to make sure nobody's stolen the cheese, and congratulate each other on another successful performance. The regulars reappear, the party resumes, and, until the next raid, life returns to its usual chaos. In the end, surviving a raid is a team effort, equal parts planning, acting, and luck. In a world where the rules change with the wind, you become an expert at hiding trouble, smiling through suspicion, and making the law believe that, really, all you want is a little peace and quiet, and maybe an official permit for the next pillow fight. There's no 401k. When you're too old, you pivot, laundress, cook, or unofficial den mother. Some save up enough to start a tavern or run a rival brothel. Most just hope to make it through another winter with all their toes and most of their teeth. The truth is, the medieval lady of the night doesn't retire so much as transition. The idea of golden years is as distant as a hot bath and just as unlikely. You won't find anyone poring over investment scrolls or bragging about their portfolio. There's only one plan. Keep working until your knees give out or your back finally wins its feud with the mattress. Most women dream of a graceful exit, a quiet cottage, a loyal dog, maybe a patch of garden, and a neighbor who minds their own business. But getting there requires a feat of financial wizardry, saving. You hide coins under the mattress, sew them into your hem, or tuck them in a secret box beneath the floorboards, right next to the emergency bread and the good soap. Some even invest in livestock, chickens for eggs, goats for milk, a pig if you're feeling fancy. But it's a risky game. One bad winter, a kitchen fire, or a surprise tax bill, and your savings are gone in a heartbeat, traded for a little warmth or protection when you need it most. For many, the pivot means finding a new role inside the house. The lucky ones become cooks, overseeing bubbling pots and barking orders at the younger women who don't yet understand the difference between edible soup and accidental glue. Others become laundresses, commanding an army of battered tubs, soap that bites back, and a collection of linens so well worn they deserve a pension of their own. The unofficial den mothers are perhaps the most important, wise, sharp-eyed veterans who dispense advice, medicine, and the occasional wooden spoon to the head for anyone who gets out of line. Those with true grit, and even more debts, might strike out on their own. If you're clever and ruthless, you can start your own establishment. It means endless negotiation with landlords, suppliers, guards, and the ever-watchful church. But at least you're the one keeping the ledger. You may even end up hiring your old rivals. Strange how, in the end, everyone becomes family, or at least former co-workers who owe you money. A handful try their luck in other trades. Market vendor, traveling fortune, teller, or, if they're blessed with a good singing voice and a thick skin, a tavern entertainer. The skills you've built, negotiation, reading people, dodging thrown objects, serve you well, even if the wages don't. There's also the rare fairy tale ending, marrying a customer who actually means it, moving out to the countryside, and living a life that, while quieter, is still punctuated by the occasional scandalous story shared over bread and ale. Most, though, simply keep going. The winters get harder, the aches last longer, and the jokes are sometimes a little sadder, but there's comfort in routine and company. You share extra blankets, patch each other's socks, and hold on to the hope that spring will bring more customers, and maybe, just maybe, an unexpected windfall, a lost coin, a generous patron, or the discovery of a bottle of wine hidden since last year's festival. And as the years pass, you become the house's memory keeper. You know everyone's secrets, remember every nickname, and can recite the list of best customers by heart. The younger ones look up to you for advice, for protection, and, on especially rough days, for the reminder that there's strength in surviving another year. Retirement in this world isn't about luxury. It's about finding dignity, laughter, and a measure of rest where you can. It's about knowing you've lived hard, loved fiercely, and left your mark. Maybe not in gold, but in the stories told long after the candles burn low and the world outside grows quiet. The street is its own universe. You see everything. Fights, festivals, forbidden love, and the occasional escaped pig. Sometimes you're part of the drama, sometimes you're just an eyewitness, selling advice and herbal hangover cures to knights and bakers alike. Life in the red light district is like living on a stage with no curtain and no script. Step outside, and the air itself vibrates with chaos and possibility. The cobblestones are uneven, half the lanterns are broken, and someone is always shouting about something: lost chickens, lost wallets, lost dignity. You learn to read the street like a book, or, more accurately, like a long, rambling letter, with no punctuation and several questionable stains. The days begin early, with market carts rumbling past, bakers hawking bread that's still warm, or at least softer than last night's, and city criers bellowing the news. Lost dog, rain coming, beware the taxman. You quickly pick up that every corner has its own regulars. The flower seller whose bouquets look suspiciously similar to the cemeteries. The butcher who swears his sausages are all beef but won't meet your eye. The shoeless children darting through legs, laughing and running from the town beadle. But the real stories happen after dark. That's when the festivals break loose. Masks and musicians everywhere, ribbons in the trees, and so much cheap ale you wonder if the rivers run dry. You watch wealthy merchants slumming it, hoping nobody recognizes them, and priests drifting by, heads down and robes hitched up, just passing through on their way to minister to the poor. There's always a sense that anything could happen. Fights spark over spilled wine, love affairs ignite and fizzle out before midnight, and at least once a week someone gets serenaded, badly, under the wrong window. Being in the business means you're part informant, part confessor, and sometimes the unofficial street medic. Nights come staggering in at sunrise, nursing bruises and broken hearts. "Do you have something for a headache?" they ask. And you offer your best hangover cure: willow bark tea, or, failing that, strong wine and a scolding. Bakers slip you an extra roll in exchange for advice on how to woo the miller's daughter. You collect secrets like buttons, each one worth a story, a laugh, or if you're lucky, a favor down the line. Street animals are another feature: pigs on the loose, chickens nesting where they shouldn't, and one infamous goose who has its own vendetta against anyone in a red dress. The local pets have personalities. The butcher's dog begs at your door. The neighborhood cats keep the mice population in check. And if you see the goat running wild, you know it's festival night and time to hide anything edible. The dramas are endless. You witness a brawl between rival brothel bouncers, more slapping than stabbing. And it ends when the cook arrives, wielding a rolling pin like the sword of justice. You see forbidden love, too. A noblewoman in disguise meeting her sweetheart behind the baker's shop. Two young men holding hands in the shadows, risking everything for a few stolen moments. The local tax collector sneaking a posy of wildflowers to the woman everyone swears is his cousin. Sometimes you get caught up in the madness, dragged into a festival parade, recruited to help catch a runaway pig, or roped into judging an impromptu singing contest between a pair of drunken masons and the madam herself. She always wins. The masons never remember. At the end of each week, you gather in the kitchen, trading tales of street escapades, whose wig fell off during a chase, who climbed onto the city walls to watch the stars, and who, still unidentified, put a pair of shoes on the town statue. These stories are your currency, your comfort, and your proof that even in the messiest, most unpredictable corners of medieval life, joy and absurdity are never far away. Because in this world, the street is both stage and audience, and you, part survivor, part storyteller, are always ready for the next act. Everyone has a secret wish, a regret, or a daydream. Some hope for marriage, others for travel, and a few just want one quiet night without drama. The hardest thing to keep in the business is hope, but everyone tries. You might think dreams are in short supply in a medieval brothel, but listen closely after hours and you'll hear them. Whispered into the dark, traded like secrets over cold bread, or woven into the lull between gossip and sleep. The dreams range from practical to poetic, and nobody's are exactly the same. Maybe it's the new girl hoping to save enough to leave town and start fresh somewhere nobody knows her name. Maybe it's the veteran who wishes for nothing more than a soft pair of shoes and a warm winter. Or maybe it's the madam herself, staring out the window and fantasizing about buying a small tavern where she doesn't have to manage anyone but herself and a dozen barrels of ale. Regret, too, is always present. Soft as a sigh, sharp as a splinter. Some carry regrets like heavy coins, memories of lovers lost, families left behind, or chances never taken. For every wild tale about sneaking into a feast or outsmarting the town guard, there's another story that never gets told. The child given up for adoption, the friend who vanished in the night, the moment you almost ran but couldn't bear to let go of what little you had. It's easy to laugh at disaster when the fire's warm and the stew's hot. But at midnight, regret sits close, a familiar ghost. Still, hope is stubborn, maybe the most stubborn thing in the house. Every day brings a new plan, a new scheme, a new chance. Someone's saving up for passage on a trading boat. Another's learning to read, hoping for work as a scribe or a clerk in the market. Rumors spread about distant places, The city where women run their own shops, the country manor looking for maids. The foreign land where no one asks about your past. Hope is a letter tucked away, a dream shared only with your best friend, or the wild wish that maybe, just maybe, you'll fall in love with a kind soul who wants more than a night's distraction. For most, hope is smaller, quieter. A night when nobody fights, nobody cries, and everyone gets a little extra bread with dinner. A new comb, a pretty ribbon, or a good harvest in the neighbor's field. Some nights, hope is just making it to morning with your sense of humor intact and enough coins for tomorrow's stew. The kitchen is the real sanctuary for these confessions. There, over chipped mugs of ale or endless cups of weak tea, stories unfold. What would you do if you could start over? Open a bakery. Travel to the big city. Learn to play the lute, properly this time. Some just want rest, a real holiday with no chores, no customers, and no madam calculating rent in the background. Sometimes you dream for others. You hope the girl who cries at night finds peace. You wish the cook would get a holiday. You want the guard dog to finally catch that blasted goose. You imagine the brothel itself. Patched walls, leaky roof, mismatched chairs and all, lasting long enough that maybe, someday, nobody has to worry about tomorrow quite so much. Dreams keep the darkness at bay. Even if reality barges in, rude, loud, and demanding rent, nobody gives up entirely. Not here. Maybe it's the company, maybe it's habit, maybe it's sheer medieval stubbornness. But the hope always comes back in the morning, tangled up in a new story, a new joke, or a fresh loaf of bread. Because even in the business of survival, dreams are currency. They don't pay the bills, but they keep you moving forward, heart open, eyes up. Always hoping for that little bit more, whatever it turns out to be. And maybe, just maybe, one night, the dream comes true. Or at the very least, you get the quiet night you've been wishing for. As dawn breaks, you're left sweeping floors, counting coins, and listening to the distant bells. The night is over, the city is waking, and you get a few hours to rest before it all starts again. Congratulations, you've survived another shift as a medieval lady of the night, and tomorrow it starts all over. The world looks different at dawn, and not just because you've spent most of the night avoiding spilled ale, misplaced shoes, and at least one very persistent rooster. The air is cool, soft, and just a little damp, a kind of forgiveness, washing away the heat and noise of the evening. The cobblestones outside are empty except for the baker's apprentice, already on his first run, and the market girls who wave, sleepy-eyed and smirking, knowing exactly where you've been. Inside, the house is quiet in a way it never is after dark. Even the house cat has curled up for a nap, tired from a night spent stealing bites of stew and batting coins under the cupboard. You move through the gentle aftermath, picking up stray ribbons, resetting overturned stools, and finding the odd earring tucked between floorboards. There's a hush, a momentary truce in the daily chaos, where you can hear your own breath, the creak of tired wood, and the soft thump of the kitchen staff kneading bread for breakfast. You count out your coins, stacking them carefully, subtracting the night's deductions in your head. Maybe it was a good night, maybe it wasn't, but the ledger always gets balanced in the end, one way or another. The others are finishing up their routines. Someone is shaking out the linens in the back garden, talking quietly to the hens. Another is braiding her hair by the window, humming a tune from her childhood. There's always one who's still awake, nerves too taut to sleep, sipping cold tea and watching the sun inch up over the rooftops. You swap weary smiles, quiet jokes, and maybe a leftover slice of bread. It's not quite camaraderie, but it's close. In this job, there are no true days off, only pauses, taken when you can. As the city wakes, so does the rest of the world. Merchants rattle their carts through the narrow streets, dogs bark at invisible threats, and the bells begin their slow, inevitable counting of hours. Somewhere nearby, the church choir is rehearsing, a little off-key but earnest. The landlord is already making his rounds, humming tunelessly and pretending not to peek through the shutters for any signs of late-night activity. You and your housemates share a silent agreement to ignore him until at least noon. Before sleep, you might slip outside, feeling the cool flagstones underfoot, letting the quiet morning wind brush your cheeks. There's a strange beauty to the city at this hour, softer, smaller, stripped of its nighttime bluster. You watch the sun warm the rooftops, hear the clatter of hooves, and know that you are, in your own way, a part of the city's rhythm. Just another soul awake while others dream. When you finally tumble into bed, the world narrows to your tiny corner, scratchy sheets, a borrowed blanket, and the welcome hush that follows a long, chaotic night. Sometimes you dream, sometimes you just drift in a half-waking haze, but always there's the comfort of having made it through. The rooster may crow, the madam may shout, but for a few golden hours, you are free of demands. And then, too soon, it will be time to do it all again. The night will come, bringing new faces, new stories, and the same endless cycle of laughter, fear, hope, and exhaustion. But for now, you let yourself rest, because surviving the night, in this world, is more than enough. The day begins, and so do you. Every few months, the house needs fresh faces, or at least fresh lungs. Recruitment is less about headhunting and more about word of mouth, rumors, and whoever shows up at the door after dark asking for work that pays in cash, not cabbages. There's no formal interview, just a series of awkward questions, a quick inspection for lice, and a group of seasoned workers eyeing you up like you're the last piece of bread at dinner. It's never announced. The madam doesn't post signs or pass out flyers at the local market. Recruitment happens organically, almost by magic or misfortune. Maybe a kitchen maid falls on hard times, or a traveling girl gets stranded by a runaway cart horse. Sometimes it's a friend of a friend or a cousin from the next village who's heard there's always work if you don't ask too many questions. In the brothel world, networking is a mix of desperation and gossip, and word travels fast. One whispered rumor, and a few hours later, a knock at the door. There's always a story, a sick parent, a failed harvest, a runaway husband, or just the simple need to escape somewhere, anywhere else. New arrivals are met with a mixture of suspicion, curiosity, and something like hope. The veterans gather in the common room, pretending not to watch as the madam sizes up the latest applicant. There's no resume, just a few awkward introductions, a glance at the applicant's hands. Are they steady? Are they clean? And a careful look behind the ears for telltale signs of lice. Can you sing? The madam might ask. Or, do you know how to pour ale without spilling? But the real questions come from the housemates. Can you fight? Do you snore? Can you keep a secret? The most important skill is always adaptability, being able to laugh, cry, or run at a moment's notice. Some applicants try to talk up their skills, promising to charm the wealthiest merchants or cook stew that won't cause regrets. Others are shy, wide-eyed, and overwhelmed, clutching a bundle of clothes and staring at their feet. There's no wrong answer. Everyone starts somewhere. The old hands remember their own first night, nerves jangling, hoping to blend in while secretly praying not to be noticed by the infamous rooster or the cook on a bad day. Once accepted, the newcomer is whisked away for a crash course in brothel survival. House rules, client etiquette, secret door latches, and which beds to avoid after a rainstorm. There's a ritual to the induction, gifts of a spare ribbon, a chipped mug, and if they're especially lucky, a spot near the fire for their first night. Hazing is light-hearted but pointed, stories of ghosts in the attic, warnings about the midnight bread thief, and reminders to always lock the pantry. The process is not without its awkward moments. Some try to impress by boasting about old flames or wild escapades. Others just try not to cry. The veterans offer advice. Don't trust the cook's soup on Tuesdays, avoid eye contact with the tax collector, and remember that the madam's threats are only half serious. The quickest way to win favor? Show up, work hard, and don't borrow socks without asking. It's not all tension and nerves, though. There's a strange sense of family, a kindness that sneaks in after the awkward introductions. Someone always offers to share bread or patch a tear in a dress. The newcomers may be green, but soon enough, they're in on the jokes, the late-night stories, and the endless cycle of shared work and shared survival. By the end of recruitment night, the new faces have started to relax, at least a little. The house settles in, the madam ticks another name onto her mental ledger, and the veterans trade bets on which new recruit will last the winter, which will run away before the next tax collection, and which will someday rise to run the place herself. And so the cycle continues, with each new arrival bringing fresh stories, new dreams, and a little more laughter to help everyone make it through the long medieval night. Medieval holidays are a double-edged sword. On one hand, the town is bustling, the streets are packed, and there's more coin to be made in one night than all week. On the other, it's absolute chaos, drunken revelers, impromptu parades, and someone always ends up in your room dressed as a chicken. You work extra hours, dodge more flying vegetables, and hope the festival ends before your patience does. The medieval calendar is bursting with reasons to celebrate, or at least reasons for people to pretend they're celebrating while actually just looking for an excuse to drink, eat, and make as much noise as possible. Saints' days, harvest fairs, royal birthdays, and the ever-popular market days all mean the same thing for the house: overtime, and not the kind where you get paid extra for your trouble. You can spot a festival coming by the smell alone: roasting meat, spilled ale, and the faint, desperate aroma of last-minute flower garlands. On feast days, the brothel transforms into a sort of medieval party headquarters. Customers pour in, coins jingling, and suddenly everyone wants the best room, the best wine, and the best stories. The kitchen staff is stretched to the limit, boiling cauldrons of questionable stew and burning more bread than usual. The air is thick with laughter, music, and the sound of at least one lute being played badly, always by the same customer who swears he almost played for the king once. Costumes are everywhere. Some guests dress as saints, others as jesters, a few as animals, and one memorable merchant as a turnip. He still hasn't lived it down. You develop the skills of a circus ringmaster, organizing groups, calming disputes, and convincing drunken revelers that no, the cat doesn't want to join your parade. Someone inevitably brings in a farm animal, swearing it's for luck, and you spend half an hour chasing a goat around the main room before anyone even notices the rooster has gone missing. For the staff, it's all hands on deck. Everyone's on the clock, from the shyest new recruit to the grizzled veteran, with stories about feast days that make last year look tame. You rotate jobs, greeting guests at the door, cleaning up spills, playing peacemaker between rival factions, and keeping a careful eye on your pockets. Festival pickpockets are more creative and faster than usual. Extra coins flow in, but so do extra headaches. Drunken declarations of love, ill-advised dancing on tables, and surprise contests, who can eat the most onions, are all par for the course. The local officials make their rounds, hoping for free food, gossip, or a discreet bribe. The madam floats from room to room like a general surveying the battlefield, keeping the peace with a stern look and an iron-clad ladle. If you're lucky, you make it through with nothing worse than sore feet and a few wild stories. If you're unlucky, you wake up to find your best dress missing, a chicken in your bed, and the vague sense that you might have agreed to marry the town's least eligible bachelor. But there are perks. The food is slightly better, someone always brings sweets, and every now and then, a musician who actually knows how to play appears, filling the house with music that lingers long after the festival ends. When the crowds finally thin and the last revelers stumble out into the dawn, You and your housemates gather in the quiet, swapping coins, stories, and whatever festival food you manage to hide away. The exhaustion is real, but so is the feeling of having survived another medieval holiday, a feat in itself. Because in this world, feast days mean a little more money, a lot more chaos, and memories, and bruises that last long after the festival banners come down. And if you're very lucky, you escape the whole thing with both shoes, your dignity mostly intact, and only a mild suspicion that you promised to baptize someone's pig at next year's fair. So as the last candle gutters out, let's take a quiet moment to remember what you've just survived. A night in the medieval red light district, a parade of odd jobs, tangled loyalties, cheap stew, and even cheaper wine. You made it through the drama, the debts, the rivalries, and the endless parade of customers who somehow always managed to spill something sticky on the bedsheets. You witnessed the gossip, dodged the constables, and learned the unwritten rules of the world's oldest, most misunderstood profession without ever having time for a decent bath. But beneath the layers of hardship and sarcasm, there's something stubborn and quietly inspiring about these women. They lived on the edge of respectability, holding together, found families, looking out for each other when no one else would, and surviving night after night in a world that wasn't built to be kind. They found moments of laughter, pride, and even love in a life that demanded grit and more than a little cleverness. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into your clean bed, sheets washed, doors locked, and not a single landlord banging on your wall for overdue onions, maybe pause and be grateful for the little luxuries of modern life. Indoor plumbing, real privacy, soap that doesn't double as perfume, the chance to rest, knowing tomorrow won't involve haggling with a priest or hiding your only coin from a suspicious goose. Because history may be grimy, hilarious, and occasionally horrifying, but it's also proof that people are relentless, hopeful, and deeply, wonderfully absurd. Sleep well, knowing you survived another night in the medieval past, and that your biggest worry tomorrow will be remembering where you left your phone, not who borrowed your best dress. Good night, and dream easily.